Welcome to another life coaching session. It's Tuesday. It's time to, help somebody. And life coaching is pretty interesting because everybody has a different goal. Everybody has a different thing they want to accomplish, a different thing they want to do, a different place they want to be. Some are very personal. Some are obvious. Somebody's trying to develop a new business or a new ministry or make some more money, lose some weight, get in better shape, figure out something, how to restore some issue with the family. There's all sorts of goals. And this particular goal is somebody who's trying to figure out how to deal with a child who's being bullied. So here's the question. I'm not sure if I have the best answer for this. The reason is because I grew up in a really rough Italian neighborhood in New Jersey. And the way we dealt with bullying was very different than the way people deal with it today. So I can only tell you what I know, and I'll give you my experience and try to help you through this, okay? Person asks me, how do I deal with my bullied child, and when do I step in? Man, in life coaching, you have to know more in order to answer that question. Because I have to know how old the child is. I have to know if it's a male or a female, a boy, a girl. Is it a 13-year-old boy? Is it a 7-year-old girl? Is it a girl who's being threatened physically? Is it a kid who's being beat up on the way home? Is it somebody who's being talked about on the internet and they're making posts? They're making fun of the way they look. Is somebody with a speech impediment and they make fun of the way they talk? Is it somebody who's got some sort of a look about them that they can pick on, or the ears are too big, or they call them all sorts of names? I mean, kids can be cruel. So I don't know what bullied means when someone says, how do I deal with my bullied child? When to step in and when to step in. I'll tell you how we dealt with it. I can only share this particular experience because I lived it. And, we had a rough neighborhood. And I had an older brother, Mario, who was 8 years older than me, and he was the baddest guy in the neighborhood. He could beat up everybody, and he enjoyed it. He had a gift for it. I don't know where it came from, but he could hold that angst inside of him and be looking around. If somebody's looking at him wrong, he's like, "What are you looking at?" "I'm looking at nothing. I'm looking at you." "Oh, you looking at me? Well, let me tell you something." Next thing you know, he's walking towards this guy, and before you know it, boom, 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 boom. I didn't have that. I wasn't that type of person. I mean, I'm not saying that I probably couldn't, but I couldn't sustain it like he could. He just was that guy all the time. He was 24/7. So no one ever bullied him. It just wasn't worth it. The price was way too high. However, I lived in this house with my brother and my father, and the last thing my father was going to do was going to go down to a school and deal with some kid who's pushing me around. And my brother, this kid better be a lot bigger than you before he gets involved, because my brother, his way of dealing with it was really quite simple. And I had an issue. So there was this one time where I was playing on my porch, and I had to have been, I don't know, let me think, because we moved out of that house when I was 11, so I had to be about 9 years old, maybe 9 or 10. This kid moved over from Germany, and so they held him back a couple grades because he couldn't speak the language, and German, when a kid speaks with a German accent and speaks in broken English, if you're a 10-year-old kid from New Jersey, it's kind of scary because everything sounds like, it sounds a little bit threatening because he's got an issue anyway because he's being held back, so he's bigger than everybody. You're 10, he's 12, and he's just, he's dealing with a language issue. Who knows what problems this kid has? Anyway, for some reason, he wanted to pick on me. I don't know. I just look like one of those kids that can get picked on, right? I don't know. I had that look. So I was playing on my porch with my friend. I'm 10 years old. I don't know what we had, our little army men or something. And this kid that I saw at school drove by our house. And he looked up and he recognized me from school. So he comes up on the, he stops with his bike, parks it in the street. So the bike is standing up in the street. He hops off and he walks up and he says something to me like, I don't know. I don't remember what he said, but it was like something like really antagonistic. And I guess it was kind of back then you were just trying to show off to your friends. And he was showing off to his friend that he was gonna, I don't know, beat up this Italian kid in this Italian neighborhood just because he could. So he comes up on the porch and he just, he does a bunch of bad things and he pushes us around and gets us in headlocks and kicks over our toys. And I was with a friend of mine and, and I went running in the house crying because, he was bigger, he's bigger and he had a German accent. I was scared. I didn't know what that meant. So I go in the house and my father comes out. He says, "What's the matter?" He's this kid, blah, blah, blah. And the kid's walking down the street. He's going to where his bike is. And my father comes back in the house and then my brother comes out. Mario comes out. And he says, so what happened? I said, well, this kid, he came over and he blah, 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 blah. And he said, so what'd you do about it? I said, I didn't do anything because he's bigger than me. He's from Germany, man. What do I know? Maybe they're tougher over there. He said, well, go, you beat him up. He said, no, you need to beat him up. You're bigger. He said, no, you beat him up or I'm going to beat you up. Now this is a dilemma. So now I have to look at my brother and I have to look at this kid. And my brother's obviously a lot bigger than him. And it seemed like the lesser of two evils. So now I was stuck. And I had to go down to I'd never been in a fight before. What did I know? I was playing with army men. So I went down there and I stood next to him and he was on his bike it's at the curb. And he was sitting on his bike in the street, right? So I stood there and I walked up to him like I was really going to do something. And I really never done this before, so I didn't know what to do. So I looked up at my brother and I was like, what do I do? My brother said, "Fine." So I was like, okay. Like I said, it was the lesser of two evils. So I pushed this kid. And oh my gosh, he fell in the street on his bike, which really hurts a lot. And it's really embarrassing. And so everybody laughed. Oh, he came up with his hands like this. And I looked up at my brother and he was like, showing me what to do. And I just remember taking a big swing at him because that's what I saw watching the Lone Ranger on TV. I mean, the Lone Ranger pulls back here and he goes whack and he knocks that guy out and he flips over the table. But in real life, it just doesn't really happen that way. So I swung back and I threw a punch at this guy right in his head. I was gonna knock him out like they do on TV. And he did the most unimaginable thing I could have ever seen. He ducked. He just went, and my hand went over his head. And that got me so mad because I was embarrassed now. I was humiliated. I don't remember what happened from that point on. The last thing I remember was I was on top of this guy, banging his head into the ground, and my father came out in a fury saying, what is going on? And he picked me up like, what is wrong with you? And he picked me up and I'm still swinging and kicking and swinging and kicking. He had to like really tone me down and tell that kid to get out of there. That was the first fight I ever got into. And my brother was like, he was really proud of me. He was like, oh, good, nah, he's not going to pick on you no more. With somebody who's bullied, somehow, I'm not saying you go the old Jersey route. Sometimes it's necessary. But most times, you have to help that child to figure out how they can undo this on their own. Because if you go down to the school, unless it's something that's overwhelming and they're unable to deal with it, but if it's an individual, the thing about bullying is this. bullying really only works when somebody is willing to take it. Bullying is somebody pushing somebody around because they can. The moment that that person pushes back, the game is over. There's nothing, this kid's not bullyable. You can't push him around because he's going to fight you back. And the last thing a bully wants is somebody that fights back, or else they're not going to be a bully no more. So usually if somebody fights back and there's a price tag to pay, then that bully will move on. The best scenario is to help that child figure out a way how they can remedy this in their own age group, amongst their own peers, amongst the people they're going to have to live with day after day after day after day. Because if somebody comes in from the outside to solve it, especially if it's a boy and his mother comes in, I would just, oh man, that'd be the worst. But here's the thing, some mothers don't have husbands, some are single mothers, and the kid's father is a really bad example. And they're used to taking up for that child and fixing things, so they don't really have a choice, and they don't want their kid to be tormented. So there's always some other way of dealing with this, other than just allowing the child to be taken advantage of. The last resort is if you step in. That's the last resort. When children are put in some form of self-defense class, now I don't know what the bullying is, so I don't know what the issue is. So I'm just going to assume, because I have to take a position or else I can't even deal with it. I have to assume it's a physical threat. All right, so I'm just going to take this as a physical threat. If the child is somehow physically threatened by somebody, when a child learns martial arts, they learn how to take care of himself. They learn how to express their feelings of leave me alone through what they do physically, as opposed to just saying it. They might say it and really mean it, or they can act and really mean it. And most times, kids who have the confidence that comes with learning some sort of a martial art, whether it's boxing or wrestling or now it's mixed martial arts, so they kind of learn a little bit of everything. It's karate or whatever it is. It gives them a confidence to know that they can't be taken advantage of. And these are kids that are least likely to be bullied. And if they ever do get bullied, usually it takes one little brief encounter and the bully, it shuts the bully down. Even if he just doesn't have to knock him out, he can just fight back, realize there's a penalty, and the bully moves on to somebody else. I would encourage anybody to take the child to some sort of a self-defense class, because it does not going to hurt them at all if they learn how to protect themselves physically, because this is just the world we live in. We live in a world where people walk into schoolrooms with guns and kill people. They walk into the back of churches and mow people down. They shoot people from high rises that are at a concert. This is a mean world, and you have to have some common sense about this and have an awareness of imminent danger. And my personal suggestion is jiu-jitsu. I like that because it doesn't require high-flying kicks. It doesn't require big stamina. It doesn't require size. It doesn't require a lot of muscles. It just requires a technique, and it builds a confidence in them that they can handle anything. And jiu-jitsu is a way to submit someone and shut them down, almost like throw a net over them, as opposed to hitting them with a baseball bat. It's a difference. You can subdue a lion by shooting them, or you can throw a net over the lion. Either way, it shuts down what the lion's going to do. Jiu-jitsu has a way of throwing a net over it by, restraining them, and it's not as violent. Usually, guys, when they quit in a jiu-jitsu fight, they're usually saying, "Okay, I give up." They're what they call tap out. If it's a boxing thing or a karate, you have to strike them, you have to hit them, you have to damage them in order to get them to back off of you. So it's the only thing that I would just make a suggestion. Of course, there's lots of different ways, but I would seek some sort of outside help on how to help that child to figure out a way how to remedy their situation in their own community, in their own life, because they're going to They're going to be 18 someday. They're going to be 30 someday. And they're going to be confronted with all sorts of bullies. And they have to have inside of them the ability to not fear anyone. They're going to remember when they were kids and they stood up to the Goliath. Every kid needs to have that experience, to standing up to something that's bigger than you and facing it, because the things I learned on that one day last me the rest of my life. And when I was going after, coliseums and stadiums and wanting to fill them up for the kingdom of God, they looked to me like bullies. And I had to almost look at those places and stare at them until they appeared smaller and smaller, until I said, I can take it. And it was like I was 10 years old facing some 12-year-old kid with an accent that scared me, because it was foreign. And teaching a child how to face a Goliath in his life. And not to mention that this is a matter of prayer. But I promise you, whatever that matter of prayer is going to be, God doesn't always take away those things. The Bible says he prepares a table before you in the presence of your enemies. A lot of times he doesn't take those enemies away, but he teaches you how to survive while those enemies are present. I hope that helped.